I just got out of the shower, so my hair is just kind of in a banana clip, and I have my ears on. Do you know somebody actually told me to take in the comments, take off the bat ears? I said, no, they're not bat ears, they're cat ears, and I happen to like them. That's it, that's all. Hey, Wendy.
Wayfair vous propose de superbes
Hey,
offres pour la
Linda.
maison tous les jours. Si
Okay.
superbe que vous vous demanderez qu'est-ce que j'ai fait pour mériter ça.
Alrighty.
De bonnes
And
affaires.
after this, we're going to do Sassy Saturday. Okay? Alrighty. Little Town on the Prairie. Chapter 11. Miss Wilder teaches school. Alrighty, we're halfway through this book. Little Town on the Prairie. Miss Wilder teaches school. Why does it say 2? It's like chapter 2? I don't know. Anyway. Early on the first day of school, Laura and Carrie set out. They wore their best sprig calico dresses, for Ma said they would outgrow them before next summer anyway. They carried their school books under their arms, and Laura carried their tin dinner pail. The coolness of the night still lingered in the early sunlight. Under the high blue sky, the green of the prairie was fading to soft brown and mauve. A little wind wandered over it, carrying the fragrance of ripening grasses and the pungent smell of wild sunflowers. All along the road, the yellow blossoms were nodding, and in its grassy middle, they struck with soft thumps against the swinging dinner pail. Laura walked in one track and Carrie in the other. Oh, I do hope Miss Wilder will be a good teacher, said Carrie. Do you think so? Oh, I do. Pa must think so. He's on the school board, Laura pointed out. Though maybe they hired her because she's the Wilder boy's sister. Oh, Carrie, remember those beautiful brown horses? Just because he has those horses doesn't make his sister nice, Carrie argued. But maybe she is. Anyway, she knows how to teach. She has a certificate, said Laura. Well, just because we've proved it in the past, eh? There's a lot of people out there with PhDs who are still idiots. You know, who wouldn't know common sense from common courtesy. You know what I mean? Anyway, she knows how to teach. She has a certificate, said Laura. She sighed, thinking how hard she must study. She must study to get her own certificate. Main Street was growing longer. Now a new livery stable was on Pa's side of it, across from the bank. A new grain elevator stood tall beyond the far end of the street across the railroad tracks. Why are all those lots vacant between the livery stable and Pa's? Carrie wondered. Laura did not know. Anyway, she liked the wild prairie grasses there. Pa's new haystack stood thick around his barn. He would not have to haul hay from the claim to burn this winter. She and Carrie turned west on 2nd Street, beyond the schoolhouse. New little claim shanties were scattered now. A new flour mill was racketing by the railroad tracks, and across the vacant lots between 2nd Street and 3rd Street could be seen the skeleton of the new church building on 3rd Street. Men were working on it. A great many strangers were in the crowd of pupils gathered at the schoolhouse door. Carrie timidly shrank back, and Laura's knees weakened, but she must be brave for Carrie, so she went on boldly. The palms of her hands grew moist with sweat when so many eyes looked at her. There must have been 20 boys or girls. Taking firm grip on her courage, Laura walked up to them and Carrie went with her. The boys stood back a little on one side and the girls on the other. It seemed to Laura that she simply could not walk to the schoolhouse steps. Then suddenly she saw on the steps Mary Power and Minnie Johnson. She knew them, and they had been in the school last fall, before the blizzards came. Mary Power said, "Hello, Laura Ingalls." Her dark eyes were glad to see Laura, and so was Minnie Johnson's freckled face. Laura felt all right then. She felt she would always be very fond of Mary Power. "We've picked our seats. We're going to sit together," said Minnie. But why don't you sit across the aisle from us? They went into the schoolhouse together. Mary's books and Minnie's were on the back desk by the next on the back desk next to the wall. Bleh, tongue twister. On the girls' side, Laura laid hers on the desk across the aisle. Those two back seats were the very best seats. Carrie, of course, must sit near the teacher with the smaller girls. Miss Wilder was coming down the aisle with the school bell in her hand. Her hair was dark and her eyes were gray. She seemed a very pleasant person. Her dark gray dress was stylishly made, like Mary's best one, tight and straight in front with a pleated ruffle just touching the floor and an overskirt draped and puffed above a little train. You girls have chosen your seats, haven't you? She said pleasantly. Yes, ma'am, Minnie Johnson said bashfully. But Mary Power smiled and said, I'm Mary Power, and this is Minnie Johnson and Laura Ingalls. We would like to keep these seats if we may, please. We're the biggest girls in school. Yes, you may keep these seats, said Miss Wilder very pleasantly. She went to the door and rang the bell. Pupils came crowding in till nearly all the seats were filled on the girls' side. Only one seat was left vacant. On the boys' side, all the back seats were empty because the big boys would not come to school until the winter term. They were all still working on the claims. Laura saw that Carrie was sitting happily with Mamie Beardsley. Beardsley. What's the movie reference? Flash, pop quiz. Carrie was sitting happily with Mamie Beardsley near the front where the younger girls should sit. Suddenly she saw a strange girl hesitating in the aisle. She seemed about as old as Laura and as shy. She was small and slim. Her soft brown eyes were large in a small round face. Her hair was black and softly wavy, and around her forehead the short hairs curled. She was flushing pink from nervousness. Timidly she glanced at Laura. Unless Laura would take her as a seatmate, she must sit alone in the empty seat. Quickly Laura smiled and patted the seat beside her. The new girl's great brown eyes laughed joyously. She laid her books on her desk and sat down beside Laura. Hey, Kathy! Oh, it's a good cup of tea. Oh. No, it's not Beetlejuice. Beardsley. I'll give you a clue. North. But his legal name is North. You got to be my age or older. Briar would know it. It's one of his favorite movies. When Miss Wilder had called the school to order, she took the record book out and went from desk to desk writing down the pupils' names. Laura's seatmate answered that her name was Ida Wright, but she was called Ida Brown. She was the adopted daughter of Reverend Brown and Mrs. Brown. Reverend Brown was the new congregational minister who had just come to town. Laura knew that Pa and Ma did not like him very much, but she was sure she liked Ida. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you. Good for you, Kathy. One of mine and Briar's favorite movies to watch together. And not the new one, the old one with Henry Fonda and Lucille Ball. Classic movie. Miss Wilder had put her record book in her desk and was ready to begin school when the door opened again. Everyone looked to see who came tardily to school on this first day. Laura could not believe her eyes. The girl who came in was Nellie Olson from Plum Creek in Minnesota. Now remember, folks, these stories are fictionalized based on Laura's life. Not everything. Some characters have been changed. Characters have been melded together. All kinds of stuff. And it has been fictionalized and written for children. So it's based on her life, not fully true to life, though. She had grown taller than Laura, and she was much slimmer. She was willowy while Laura was still as round and dumpy as a little French horse. But Laura knew her at once, though it was 2 years since she had seen her. Nellie's nose was still held high and sniffing. Her small eyes were still set close to it, and her mouth was prim and prissy. Nellie was the girl who made fun of Laura and Mary because they were only country girls, while her father was a storekeeper. She had spoken impudently to Ma, and she had been mean to Jack, the good and faithful bulldog who was dead now, who never existed. She had come late to school, yet she stood looking if the house were not. She came late to school, but stood looking as if the school were not good enough for her. She wore a fawn-colored dress made with a polonaise. Deep pleated ruffles was around the bottom of the skirt, around her neck, and falling from the edges of the wide sleeves. At her throat was a full jabot of lace. Her fair, straight hair was smoothly drawn back from her sharp face and twisted into a tall French knot. She held her head high and looked scornfully down her nose. "I would like a back seat, if you please," she said to Miss Wilder, and she gave Laura a nudging look that said, "Get out and give me that seat." Laura sat more solidly and firmly where she was and looked back at Nellie through narrowed eyes. I did one of those quizzes once that said, "Who was your doppelganger of the past?" Mine was Laura Ingalls. Isn't that wild? Everyone else looked at Miss Wilder to see what she would do. Miss Wilder cleared her throat nervously. Laura kept on looking at Nellie till Nellie looked away. Whoops. She looked at Minnie Johnson and said, nodding toward Minnie's seat, "That place will do." "Will you change, Minnie?" Miss Wilder asked, but she had promised Minnie that she might sit there. Slowly, Minnie answered, "Yes, ma'am." Slowly, she picked up her books and went forward to the vacant seat. Mary Power did not move, and Nellie stood waiting in the aisle. She could not go around the seat to the place that Minnie had left. "Now, Mary," Miss Wilder said, "if you will move over and make room for our new girl, we'll be all settled." Mary stood up. "I'll go with Minnie. I'd rather," Mary said shortly. Nellie sat down smiling. She had the best seat in the room and the whole desk for her own use. Laura was meanly glad to hear her tell Miss Wilder for the record book that her father was living on a claim north of town. So Nellie herself was a country girl now. Then suddenly Laura realized that Pa was moving to town for the winter, and she and Carrie would be town girls. It's all silly, isn't it? Miss Wilder rapped the desk with her ruler and said, "Attention, boys and girls," and then she made a little speech, smiling all the time. She said, "Now we're all ready to begin the school term, and we're all going to do our best to make it a success, aren't we? You are all here to learn as much as you possibly can, and I'm here to help you. You must not look upon me as a taskmistress, but as a friend. We're all going to be the very best of friends, I'm sure." The small boys were squirming, and Laura wanted to. She could not look at Miss Wilder smiling any more. She only wished that Miss Wilder would stop talking, but Miss Wilder went on in her smiling voice. "None of us will ever be unkind or selfish, will we? I am sure that not one of you will ever be unruly, so there need be no thought of punishments here in our happy school. We shall all be friends together and love and help each other." Then she said at last, "You may take your books." There were no recitations that morning, for Miss Wilder was sorting the pupils into their classes. Laura and Ida, Mary Power, Minnie, and Nellie Olson were the only big girls. They were the most advanced class, and the whole class until the big boys would come to school. At recess, they stayed in a group, getting acquainted. Ida was warm and friendly as she looked. "I'm only an adopted child," she said. "Mother Brown took me out of a home, but she must have liked me to do that, don't you think so?" "Of course she liked you. She couldn't have helped it," Laura said. She could imagine what a pretty baby Ida must have been with her black curls and her big laughing brown eyes. But Nellie wanted all the attention for herself. "I really don't know whether we'll like it out here," Nellie said. "We're from the East. We're not used to such rough country and rough people." "You come from western Minnesota, from the same place we did." said Laura. Oh, that. Nellie brushed that away. Minnesota with Nellie brushed away Minnesota with her hand. We were there only a little while. We come from the East, from New York State. We all come from the East, Mary Power told her shortly. Come on, let's all go outdoors in the sunshine. My goodness, no, said Nellie. Why, this wind will tan your skin. They were all tanned but Nellie, and she went on airily. I may have to live out in this rough country for a little while, but I shan't let it spoil my complexion. In the East, a lady always keeps her skin white and her hands smooth. Nellie's hands were white and slender. There was no time to go outdoors anyway. Recess was over. Miss Wilder went to the door and rang the bell. At home that night, Carrie chattered about the day at school until Pa said she was as talkative as a blue jay. Let Laura get a word in edgewise. Why are you so quiet, Laura? Anything go wrong? Then Laura told about Nellie Olson and all she had said and done. She finished. Miss Wilder shouldn't have let her take the seat away from Mary Power and Minnie. Nor should you ever criticize your teacher, Laura. Those are the kind of teachings that kept children abused and misused in schools through decades and decades and decades after this. Laura felt her cheeks grow hot. She knew what a great opportunity it was to go to school, if only children thought that way today. Miss Wilder was there to help her learn, and she should be grateful. She should never impertinently criticize. She should only try to be perfect in her lessons and in deportment. Yet she could not help thinking, just the same, she shouldn't have. It wasn't fair. So the Olsons came from New York State, did they? Pa was amused. That's not so much to brag about. Laura remembered that Pa lived in New York State when he was a boy. He went on, I don't know how it happened, but Olson lost everything he had in Minnesota. He hasn't a thing in the world now but his homestead claim, and they tell me his folks back east are helping him out, or he couldn't hang on till he makes a crop. Maybe Nellie feels she's got to brag a little to hold her own. I wouldn't let it worry you, Laura. But she has such pretty clothes, Laura protested. And she can't do a bit of work. She keeps her face and hands so white. You could wear your sunbonnet, you know, Ma said. And as for pretty dresses, likely they come out of a barrel. And maybe she's like the girl in the song, who was so fine with a double ruffle around her neck and nary a shoe to wear. Laura supposed she should be sorry for Nellie, but she wasn't. She wished that Nellie Olson had stayed in Plum Creek. Pa got up from the supper table and drew his chair near the open door, and he said, Bring me my fiddle, Laura. I want to try a song I heard a fellow singing the other day. He whistled the chorus. I believe the fiddle will beat his whistling. Softly, Laura and Carrie washed the dishes, not to miss a note of the music. Pa sang low and longingly with the sweet, clear voice of the fiddle. Then meet me, oh meet me, when you hear the first whippoorwill will call. Whippoorwill, the fiddle called, and the fluting throbbing of the throat of the bird. Whippoorwill, the fiddle answered, near and pleading. Whippoorwill, then far soft, but coming nearer. Whippoorwill, till all the gathering twilight was filled with the wooing of the birds. Laura's thoughts untangled from their ugly snarls and became smooth and peaceful. She thought, I will be good. It doesn't matter how hateful Nellie Olson is. I will be good. Thank you for joining me for Little Town on the Prairie Live. I have to get set up for my patrons live Sassy Saturday. Anybody who doesn't know, we no longer have Freaky Friday. It's now Sassy Saturday because Howie's in bed usually by now, which he is. Had a lovely birthday. Made two pans of lasagna. One went in the freezer. The other one we ate half. Yeah, we ate half, and the other half is in the fridge. So we're gonna be eating lasagna for a while. Thank you for joining me for Little Town on the Prairie Live, and we'll see you again soon. Probably one afternoon this week. Take care. God bless. Patrons, I will see you on Singing with Mrs. Wolfie. No, it's all about Gracie. Take care. God bless. Bulk.